Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Natural Resources poster. Over 40 years of research has indicated the health benefits of parks, open space, and natural areas to communities. These range from active living to reduced chronic disease such as diabetes, cardiovascular, and respiratory diseases, reduced environmental exposure, mental well-being, greater cognitive function, and increased recovery from stress and trauma. Parks and open space are also associated with reduced crime in communities, greater social cohesion, and increased safety from transportation hazards. Parks and natural areas are also key components of protecting people, neighborhoods, and infrastructure from the impacts of climate change. These are called nature-based solutions, and they're defined as actions to protect, manage, and restore natural or modified ecosystems which address societal challenges effectively and adaptively, simultaneously providing human well-being and biodiversity benefits. Natural systems lessen climate impacts by absorbing and storing carbon dioxide. Forests, open space, wetlands, rivers, and streams protect drinking water quality and quantity, provide flood control, and give relief from extreme heat. Healthy ecosystems are more resistant to stresses from a changing climate and better able to adapt against heat, extreme precipitation, and flooding. The first map we're going to look at is the Trees and Urban Heat Islands map. Plymouth has over 54% of its land area covered in tree canopy. These provide important ecological services such as cooling from shade and evapotranspiration, capturing greenhouse gases to reduce the contributing factors to climate change, avoiding stormwater runoff and pollutants entering our waterways, and improving air quality through photosynthesis. Urban heat islands are areas that are hotter than nearby surrounding areas during hot days. These are typically due to excessive impervious surface and limited tree canopy cover. The urban heat islands in this map are areas where the ground surface temperature is greater than 98 degrees. That's determined by land surface temperature data during a 90-degree day in July 2016. Heat islands can affect communities by increasing summertime peak energy demand, air conditioning costs, increasing air pollution like ozone and greenhouse gas emissions, heat-related illnesses and mortality, as well as water pollution from algal blooms. Next, we'll talk about valuable habitat. Nearly 30% of the land area in Plymouth is protected land. Additionally, 86% of residents are within a 10-minute walk of a park, over 30% greater than the national average of 54%. Biomap core habitat and critical natural landscapes are state-identified intact landscapes or exemplary natural communities that are better able to withstand climate stresses and support the long-term viability of biodiversity and ecosystem services, such as protecting water quality and air quality. Plymouth contains over 30,000 acres of biomap core habitat and over 30,000 acres of critical natural landscape, each of which is nearly 50% protected. Now we'll talk about aquatic systems. Freshwater wetland systems sustain critical functions in climate change, such as restoring drinking water quantity and quality, providing flood control, and maintaining overall ecosystem health. Residents of Plymouth repeatedly boasted the unique and abundant ponds in town, stating there is a pond for every day of the year in Plymouth. Indeed, there are over 450 ponds encompassing 5,000 acres in Plymouth, according to a study performed by University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth. Some of these ponds are coastal plain ponds, which is a globally rare geologic feature. And some of these ponds are called kettle ponds, another important geologic feature created during the last ice age, where melting glaciers left blocks of ice that created depressions in the landscape filled with water. They are isolated in the landscape and highly influenced by shifting climatic conditions, such as changes in precipitation and temperature. Plymouth's kettle ponds are highly influenced by the aquifer and groundwater table, where it is present at the surface. So water levels in the ponds are determined by the amount of groundwater. Because groundwater exists at the surface, there are concerns about nitrification or pollution to the groundwater from runoff going into the ponds and entering into the aquifer. Also, kettle ponds are susceptible to warming, and recent years have indicated a disparity in the surface temperature of the pond to the bottom temperature, which ultimately creates more intense algal blooms at the top. Despite this, there are over 6,000 acres of biomap aquatic core habitat, and these are intact river corridors where integral physical and ecological processes of the water system occur. There are only a small percentage of Plymouth's total water resources that are regulated by the Clean Water Act, requiring pollution regulations and total maximum daily loads. These include Plymouth Harbor, Russell Mill Pond, Ellisville Harbor, Billington Sea, Halfway Pond, and Savory Pond. The majorities of these pollutants are due to harmful algal blooms. Fecal coliform also affects Plymouth Harbor. Now we'll talk about drinking water systems in Plymouth. The Plymouth Carver sole source aquifer is the second largest in the state and provides drinking water to Plymouth's residents and 6 surrounding towns, with over 500 billion gallons of water. Plymouth also receives its drinking water from an additional medium yield aquifer, and there are 12 wells at 10 different site locations in Plymouth that enable 14,000 different water service connections. Because of its large expanse, approximately 80% of Plymouth is covered with an aquifer protection zoning district. This zoning overlay regulates density, use, and wastewater discharges to minimize the impact of land use on water quality and groundwater contamination. Importantly, as mentioned, groundwater presents as surface water in most of Plymouth's Kettle Ponds. And since Plymouth has grown significantly in that last decade with over 800 new housing units over 300 acres of lands, there has been concern indicated by Plymouth residents and stakeholders on the ongoing supply of clean drinking water with rapid growth. Water quality and water quantity concerns, as well as the public health implications, are magnified with climate change. In addition, with projected sea level rise and the increased frequency and intensity of precipitation events or drought, extreme heat, and shifting freeze-thaw cycles, climate change is expected to strain drinking water supplies. For coastal aquifers such as Plymouth, saltwater intrusion and salinization is a potential water quality issue, particularly because there is no hydrogeologic barrier like clay to prevent saltwater entering into the groundwater. Though this has not been a risk to the town of Plymouth, sea level rise may further present contamination issues. Furthermore, excessive coastal erosion can cause greater exposure of the aquifer to saltwater.